I think like Ernest mentioned before on, can I hear somebody so that I know I'm not alone?
Yeah, you can hear you.
Okay,
yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. So good evening, good morning, or afternoon, wherever you are. Today we are doing HTML. I think Ernest said that some time ago, and he posted in the group. Yes, so the plan is that we'll do HTML today. To the next session, which is Friday, we'll do CSS. Then on our last session for this particular assignment, we'll also do Bootstrap, and then we'll try and build a simple web page for whatever we'll be doing. So we are going to more like build a simple web page, which will be the skeleton for this entire program. And so today's HTML, I'm sure most of us are familiar or we've heard about HTML before. I must say that HTML it forms the skeleton of every web page that we see, and so it's not going to be your typical exciting class like you've been having when you were doing the Postgres and the QGIS and stuff, because HTML is like a skeleton, and so when you see skeletons are not that nice. But trust me, when we start, adding the CSS and the bootstraps, we'll get it will make sense. Let me say that. Yes, and so let's zoom in. For this particular as course, what we'll do is that we'll need to have a text editor. So there are two things we need. The first one is a text editor, and then the second one is the browser, or whatever browser that we are using. I'm sure the browser we all have. And for text editors, every operating system that you are using has its own text editor, default text editor. Aside that, there are other text editors that are online, and everyone has preference. I'm sure in our group here, most of us have our own preference as to text editor. For me, I prefer Sublime Text, and so I'll be using Sublime Text for this course. So I think let me share my screen, and then we can proceed. Okay. So I'm using Mac, but for those who are on Windows, I think Sublime Text, when you Google Sublime Text, you'd be able to download. So just in case you don't know of which text editor to use, you can join me use Sublime Text so that we can follow through this course. And so when you go to the Sublime Text website, they have all the versions there for Mac, for Windows, and then for Linux. So you can download them. I have downloaded them already, so I wouldn't go through. But if
hello, Eugene.
Yeah.
So they have them on their machines. It was part of the list I gave before the whole program. So we are assuming they've installed all these softwares. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's nice. Okay. So yes. So that being said, we should also know that at the end of the program, we are looking to build maybe a simple web page like what we have here, that would help us to be able to plug in all the technologies that we are learning. And so each and everyone is supposed to be able to put together something as simple as this for starters, so that we can plug in the stuff. Okay, so that being said, let's zoom into our class. To start any HTML assignment or work, you first need to create your web page or the HTML document. And to do that, you can start your text or whatever text editor you are using, and then you have to save the file. You give it a name. So let's say I give an index, and then you add an extension. There are two extensions that work for HTML. So you can use the HTML extension .htm or .html. Those are the standard extensions that work, but other people can use XHTML and stuff. They all work, but so we'll use .html for this one. And so, okay. Yes. So once you have that page set up, we can begin to run our HTML languages. And so HTML, the whole meaning of HTML is hypertext markup language. I think it was developed way back in 1995, yes, or 1991, thereabout. I think it was developed to be able to use that, text markup. So for communications to be done in simple text markups, like using headers, paragraphs, and stuff to be shared. And they found it to be useful. So it has gone through different development stages. And so from the first HTML that was developed, it has gone to version 2.0. There's been in 1995, that's when 2.0 came. And then the version 4.0, that is the most widely used HTML. It was used for a long time. That started in 1999. Then recently in 2012, we have the HTML5, which is now being used by everybody. Now, the advantages of HTML is more like for every web person, you need to be, because now that is more like the skeleton for all web applications. And so if you want to do web, just as we want to do web GIS, we need to know HTML. So yes, that's it. HTML works with tags. And so everything about HTML is tagged. Once you know the right tag to use, you are good to go for HTML. Now, the basic HTML syntax, I believe everybody can see my screen. So for this is basic skeleton for HTML. Hello. Can you hear me?
Please, yeah, I can hear you. Please, can you enlarge it a little bit so that those of us using the smaller screens can see it?
Is it better?
Yeah, I think it's better now.
Okay. So yes. Now, because of the update that HTML has gone through for your documents or your code to be identified for a particular type of HTML, that is what the first syntax is meant for, the doc type. The doc type is more like it shows us what type of HTML you are using. So if you see doc type HTML as it is written this way, then it means that we are doing HTML5. And for the previous versions, you needed to add a lot of links and resource codes where you have the HTML sign. But in the HTML5, they simplified that for us, and so we don't need to struggle. The next thing we also see is the HTML tags. And I must say that for majority of HTML tags or syntaxes, you have to start with a beginning tag and then you close it. So majority of HTML tags, you start them and then you close them. And so if you this is when you are starting a tag, so let's say the HTML tag, when you are starting it, you put it in that's your brackets. And so these brackets, and once you put it in the bracket, that is the start tag. If you are closing it, it's just the same document, but it comes with a / before the name of that tag. And so just like we see in our HTML tags, the start tag, and then you are closing it, you just add a forward slash before the name of the tag. And so after we've started our HTML tags, then we have the head. The head section is where we have all the resources that we are going to be referencing in. So later we'll learn about style, CSS, and JavaScript, and then any other font, whatever reference we want to refer to, or whatever resource we want to be calling from outside into our document. It's really advisable that we put them in the head tag. And people have several ways of doing that. We'll look at that. But the head is not designed for those purposes. So after the head, we have the body, which contains all the other documents or all the other tags that we'll be doing in our HTML. And so this is the basic structure of any HTML code or syntax. I'm sure that whilst we are going on, you would also be practicing or be following from your end. Okay, so with this tag being done, another important thing that we can also do is to add a title to whatever page that we are doing. And so the title tag is used to give our work a certain title. Mostly when you open web browsers or you open any page, the title tag is the name that appears in the browser. And so if you can see my mouse where you have the geospatial, the 15 geospatial, that's the title. And so the name of whatever you are doing will be inside there. It helps people to, even before they go through your page, they are able to identify probably what you are going to be talking about. After this, tag, there are a lot of basic tags that HTML has. And so our assignment here is that we'll go through all the tags, and by the end of we going through all the tags, I'm sure we'll be able to develop HTML web pages. And so one of the basic tags of HTML is the paragraph tag or the header tag. So there's the header tag. And just like the name is header, is used to create, text that are used to represent, that are assigned as headers. And so, for instance, if you are in our normal blocks or titles, or you see we have headers and stuff. And so we use the header tags. The header tags, they come in 6 different formats. And so we'll be looking at the header tag. But even before we look at the header tag, let me share a certain document so that we can have an idea of all the tags that we can be seeing in HTML, even before we start practicalizing and putting them together. And so there are several of them. I know there are too many that nobody can actually, or maybe somebody can, but you don't actually chew all of them, or you don't have to have all of them in your mind. At least you need an understanding of the basic ones that you would constantly be using. And one thing about development, web development, is once you are constantly practicing, they tend to stick in your memory. So you don't need to be referencing once you are practicing constantly. Nevertheless, even when you are forgotten, we have Google, we have these plenty online resources that you can go and reference, and so get these tags to suit whatever you want to do. But these are all the tags that HTML comes with. We have the doc type, the link tag, the anchor tag, which is mostly used to signify links. We have the abbreviation, the acronyms, you have aside, and each tag is meant for a specific purpose. So as you can see them, like I said, there are plenty of them. And even these ones that I've gathered here, you can see plenty of them. And it wouldn't be advisable if you are chewing all these things into your head. But like I said, as time goes on, you catch them. As HTML has also been developing, they are adding new tags. And so, for instance, the ones that are marked with the icons are the ones that are recently added by when they updated to HTML5. So those are the new tags that are there. So let's go back to our code. Now for
hello, AJ.
Yeah.
Someone is complaining on the page that your text for the Sublime is a bit smaller. So if you can still zoom in.
Okay.
Thank you. I think that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Let me so that I can be following. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, thanks. So for a tag, for every tag, it comes with its own properties. And so as we are going on, you know that for like a tag, we can add a property of style. We can add several properties when it's an anchor tag. So depending on the particular tag, you can add some specific properties. So when it is an anchor tag like this, there's a property called href. There's a property called download. We'll be looking at them all. So let's know that tag can have properties or elements, and then the elements are used to affect the tags in some specific way. So now let's put some meat in our tag, and so let's say hello world. So hello world. Don't mind mine. So we'll do a paragraph tag. Yeah. This is our first HTML. Okay. So after you input in your tags, you save your document, and then you can run the page that if you are using Sublime Text, you can open in browser, and then it will open what you've done for you. So let me shift to the other side. So yes, this is our first line of code. And let's give our work some title. Let's say hello world. Yes. And then we save. And so yes, we can see the title in there. So this is our first line of code for HTML, and that is how our work is going to continue. So from here, we are going to look at some basic tags and their attributes that mostly we use. Now, I said that there's the header tag. You know, the header tag, it comes in 6 different headers. So after the header, after header 1, we have header 2. Let me put in header 2. So I'll copy, and then I would change them. You have header 4, then the header 5, and header 6. And each of them these are like done defaultly by HTML to help us. So this header 2, header 3, 4, 5, and 6. So let's save and run, and then let's appreciate the just headers. And so yes, according to the tag, the header, the type of header tag you need, the size that you get. So these are custom sizes that you can be using. Of course, as time goes on, you can add CSS to style it, which we'll be doing, but those are it for headers. And there's also the paragraph tag that we used earlier that we can use to specify or add more text. So the normal documents that are not supposed to be, here. So this is a paragraph. Yes. Let me refresh this. And then when these headers are done, we can also be able to use other formatting tags to format our text. Now, for instance, inside this paragraph tag, I want to bolding a certain text. There's a header, there's a tag for bolding, which is the B tag, which will bolding our text. So if I put this B tag in, you can notice that the paragraph has been bolded as compared to this is that I put in there. So let me take off the rest. We can also use the italize. There's a tag for italicizing a document, which is the I tag. And so when we start and close the I tag, and let's run. Or maybe let me just give it to the this, so that, okay. Let me put in some text so that our document would stand out. Okay. So we can see that this is italicized as compared to the other documents in there. Okay. There's also one for emphasis. So if I want to emphasize certain text, now let me emphasize the beautiful text. You use the EM to emphasize. So I start and I close the EM text. And then the emphasis is a bit close to the italics, but I believe that we can see the difference. And so if I take off the italicizing of the text and then run the emphasize, I think we can see the difference. So that's for emphasizing. And then there's the markup text. Just like we highlight text, we can also decide to mark up the text. So maybe this beautiful, let me mark it. Let me mark the beautiful. So if I mark the beautiful text, it's going to highlight it for me. So as you can see, it's highlighted in the yellow syntax. We have also strong. And so from now, I'll just be going through majority of the tags just as we have it. And then would appreciate how it functions. So we have the strong. Strong is similar to the bold. So if I decide to make my text strong, it gives it a bold feel. I think I introduce a certain tag somewhere. That is this. So the strong is just more like the bold. And then there's abbreviation and on. And there's acronym to the text. there's another thing that we also have to look at is the anchor tag, which is the A tag, which is normally used to denote links. So this is a typical A tag or an anchor tag, and we'll put a link in there. And so as you can see already, it has this underlined, and once you put your mouse over, the mouse changes to show you that these links are clickable. And so defaultly, when you use an anchor tag, and the first attribute you can give the anchor tag is the reference, which is denoted by the href symbol. This is where you put in your link. So for instance, with this anchor tag, if I'm supposed to copy our link here and then paste it in the anchor tag, what will happen is, if I click on that link, it is the tag is supposed to take me to the page so you can see. So this is a way of linking web pages or web links to a certain document. So that's the anchor tag. You can equally use it to download documents. So for instance, if I put a property of download here, I'm telling that this anchor tag is downloadable. So when I click, it's supposed to, I think I need to put a file in there first. Let me put a certain document. I don't know if I have a document in there. Okay, I have this document. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, so it can be used to download. So once you set the right kind of property, so as I put in the download tag, now instead of it referencing, it is rather helping me to download. So I can download the Word document that I just put in. So yes, that's for now. Let's look at in our head. Defaultly, when you are developing an HTML page, in our head section, for HTML to be very effective, there are some things we put in our head, like the meta tags. So I wanted to look at the meta tag and what the meta tag does. Now, a typical meta tag is the default one that we normally have. And this meta tag is used to define the Unicode card or the character value of our HTML document. And so there are several meta tags, and they have different functionalities and uses. So as time goes on, maybe we can also learn about other tags, but most of them, they depend on what you need them for. Now, let me give another one. For instance, for web pages to be able to integrate very well in search engines, there's a meta tag for it. So you create your meta tag. Now, instead of putting in a character set, you give it a name, a property of a name, and then in the property, you would say the name is keyword. And then we'll give it another property of content, and then we can put any text in there, maybe geospatial developers. Yes. So if we do this now, this particular meta tag is trying to announce to all search engines that if somebody types in this web page, there's a keyword in the web page which is geospatial developers. So if somebody comes to those search engines and the person is looking for geospatial developers, my web page or this particular web page that we are creating would be useful for the person. There's also another meta tag, a similar one, that can be used to describe our web page. And so, for instance, we are developing a web page and we want the web browsers to be able to, or even search engines also, to be able to know what our web page is for. We would still put in a name, and then the name will be description. And so description, and then we'll still have the content. That is, the content will be the description of the web page we are building. So hello world. And so if this page is uploaded online and then everybody, you see, sometimes even if you are sharing a link, there's a little box on the top of the link which gives you the name of the link and the name of that web page you are sharing, normally on WhatsApp or any of these social media apps, the name of the link and what that link stands for. So it is this and the description and then the keyword names. These are responsible for those things that we see. These are, so yes, and please, are you following? Is there anybody having a question so far, or anybody having a certain challenge? Any people there?
You're following.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And so now let's also do something we call comment. In every web page we are developing, it's advisable that we put in comments. And so I'm sure from here, even in the other ones that we are going to see, every language that's a programming language that you do, it's advisable that you put in comments. Comments are a way to help those who are writing the code to be able to know their information that you give to the person writing the code. These information are not supposed to appear on the web page or at the front end of whatever you are developing. But then it is supposed to kind of inform the code, the one who is reading or who is writing the code, of a certain information. So for instance, if I want to, I can put in a comment here, and this is how we write a comment. You start with our less than sign, then you put an exclamation followed by 2 dashes. And you see, when I did that, the rest of the page, they've been grayed out, meaning that all these pages now, they would appear as a comment. They would not affect, or they would not be displayed on the page, but they are in the code. So I have to close it. When you start that, you have to end it with the 2 dashes and then the greater sign again. And so with this, whatever I put inside these symbols that I've done, it is, even though the text is going to be there, it is not going to be displayed. So for instance, this comment thing that I've done, if I run my code, you see nothing has changed. But let me do something. Let me remove this closing bit of the comment, and then let me put it somewhere here. So you realize that if I refresh, the other texts are gone. So now this particular one has become a comment. And so even though the one who is reading or who is writing the code will see it, it would not be affected in the actual web page. The other importance of comment is it is used to put more like descriptions to your code, so that when somebody takes it, the person would know what each block of code means. And so, for instance, I can say this particular section is header. This particular section is a paragraph. So if I save this code, even though yes, in the web page you are not seeing the heading and you are not seeing paragraphs, but if somebody takes my code, the person in it, the person would understand that, oh, this is heading, this is paragraph, and so on. And I can put in whatever comment that I want to put in. Now let's look at another tag that is mostly used, and that is the image tag. And the image tag is one of the few tags in HTML that you don't close them. You can close them and it will work though, but defaultly the image tag is not closed. Another one that we've already seen is that the doc type tag is also not closed. So this is how we introduce images in our web pages, by the image tag. So the first thing you see is the SRC, at the attribute SRC. This is where you put in any image that you have. And so let me see if I have some images on my desktop. No, I don't think I have. But then I can just quickly save an image. Let me save it to my desktop. Then where did I save this image? Still no. Unfortunately, they won't allow me save this image as image. In a minute. Okay. Okay. So I'm sorry. I think I just want to be. Okay, so I have an image in my document. So to reference the image, I just need to put in the path to the image in the SRC. So I can just do image, then the extension JPEG. So if I save this image and I run it in my browser, that is the image that has appeared. And so the image is also there. Even though we've not done CSS yet, there's one tag that let me quickly push in that would help us arrange our development as we are going on. That is the break tag. That's also another tag that does not have a closing tag. And so the break is just like the name indicates. It is used to break documents. And so let me put in this break tag there. And then let me refresh, and you see that now the positioning of the image has changed. So I can add more break tags to give it spaces below. Okay, so yes, let's come back to our image tag. Now another important attribute we can add to the image tag is the alt keyword. Now alt, it's supposed to help web page. You know, sometimes there are factors that can affect the image that you are putting. It can be the size of the image being big for the bandwidth of internet available, or maybe the image will not just appear. So there's an alt which would more like give a text description of the image you are putting there. So just in case the image does not disappear, the text will show. So let me alter the image name so that it wouldn't appear. and let's see what will happen. So you see the alt text that I gave it up here. So just in case the images, there's no internet and images are not uploading, at least the alt will give us a description of the kind of image that we have. We can also give it a title. The title can be given to all the other tags. And so the title will help our HTML tags. And when we hover on those, when we hover on them, so it will help us get better information on them, or when they are not coming, the title gives more information on those HTML tags. These are attributes that we can add to our image. We can also set width and height to the image. So we can just add a property of width and maybe give it like 200 pixels. And then we can also give it a height. And let's give it also 200 pixels so that it becomes big. So when we refresh, okay, the path is wrong. So let me reverse the path back. And then when we refresh, realize that our image has become bigger. If I decide to make this 500, so we can see that it has stretched. So these are all properties that we can give an image. We can, for properties, we can even align them with properties. And so we can do an align and maybe do it right. So that means that we can also, aside align, there are a lot of them. We can even do border and stuff. But personally, I advise that for these things like the width, the height, the align, I advise that sometimes we use CSS to do them, because CSS works better. It gives you a lot of control than these things. That's my own point of view, but you can also do them in your HTML document. So, okay, 200 is gone. Yes. So we can do that with the images. Now let's look at how to reference tables in HTML. Now, in a typical table, we have the rows and we have the columns. And so if in HTML, if you want to introduce tables, you have to bring in a tag called table tag. So you start a tag called table, and then you have to end it. I think I have to say that for every HTML code that we start, apart from the few ones, and there are very few, just about 2% of HTML tags that do not have closing tags. The remaining 95%, they all, when you start them and you don't close them, they will distort your entire web page. And so when you start the table tag, you have to close it. And then in closing it, that you introduce other tags inside the table. And so there's this tag called TR. The full meaning of TR is table row. So we use it to separate our tables into table row. So we have a table row. In a table row, we also have to specify whether our table row is the heading of the table. So if it is the heading of the table, we use a tag called TH. TH simply means table head. So that's the header of the table. Then we can introduce another row, so table row. And then in that table row, we'll give it a TD, which is the other rows of the table. So if it is a 2-column table, we can introduce another table head in there, and then we have to do same for the table row. So I can put in here number, I can put in here name, I can put in here name, then I can put in designation. So in the name, I can put in Eugene here. Sorry, Eugene is supposed to be in the name. So this is number 1. And then designation, I can put in here student. So let me run this table. Let's see how it appears. So that it's there. Let me introduce a break so that we can have some. And like I said earlier, you see, when you are developing HTML, it is not really nice because that is the skeleton. But then it is the CSS that will come and add some bit of styling to whatever you'll be doing. So don't worry, when we are doing the CSS, you will begin to appreciate some of these things that we're doing more. Yes, so I think this one is better. And let me reduce my breaks. Okay. Yeah, so that's the table. And you can agree with me that this table is very, very horrible. Yes, and there are a lot of CSSs that we can do to beautify this table, but also we can maybe add a table property border and give it maybe a border of 1 pixel. And so, yes, it will give our table a border. For just HTML, I wanted to stick to this one, and the remaining of them we can do with CSS. But we can maybe give it a cell padding, maybe 5, and then cell spacing of okay, let's say that's also 5. These are just some styling that HTML can add. Whose styling would come with the CSS. Also, in HTML, the list, we all know when you are listing items, you want to put items in a list. There are 2 or 3, even 3 types of list. There's one, the mostly used list types are, we have the ordered and the unordered list. So, typically when you are using Word, there's this list where you have the bullet. And there's the other list where you have like numbers, maybe Roman numerals or even numbers itself. And so you can do that in HTML by using the list tag. So if you are doing an unordered list, the tag is UL for unordered list. Then you have to, after defining the unordered list, you put in a tag of LI, which is your list itself. You can give it depending on the number of lists that you want. So list 1, give it this is 2. Then I can add a list of 3. And so if I run, yes, so it has the bulletin. So this is the unordered one. The ordered list is virtually the same, but the tag, even with, before I even come to the ordered list, even with the unordered list, you can use HTML to kind of specify the bulletin, the kind of bulletin that you need. And so, for instance, with this one, the bulletin is round, but if I want to do a bulletin of I can give it a type, property type, and I input square in there. Then the bulletin will change from round to square. I don't know if you can see it, and it might be a bit small, but the bulletin will change to square. Yes, so I can do circle, and for this ones they are shapes, so you can change them. You can do circle, and then it would, so those are bulletin. And the other one I was talking about, the ordered list, that is where you specify the kind of order that you want the list to have. So for instance, I can do I'll duplicate this one, but this time I'll change the unordered list to ordered list. So the ordered is 0. So sorry, OL for ordered list. So we do our ordered list, and then let's see what happens when we run. So you see, we have now we have typical bulletin. Normally, ordered lists don't have this. Let me see. You have actual bulletin. In the type, you can change it to Roman numerals or numbers. So in the type, I can do a type of number 1. This will give me what we have there. That's the default. So, but I can change this one to a Roman numeral I. And then if I run, it will change to Roman numerals for me. And it is case sensitive. So if I change this I to a small I, it will change them to a small I. Yes, I can do small alphabets, and then it would change them. So yes, that is for the list. There's also the third form of listing. That is where you want to list with. You see, there are some lists where you have like a header, and then you have supporting documents, but you want to list them. And so for that one, you use a DL, which is definition list. And so the DL has like a header. So let me change. Okay, let me do this one. And let me duplicate this. And duplicate this. So DL. Now in the DL, because it has a header and a body, you put in a DT and then a DD. So now instead of our list, and just like we did in the table, we have the DT, we have the DT tag, and then let's put in a tag here, maybe anything at all. So let me put in text. Sorry, let me put in text. Then after the DD, we'll have a DT. So now after the DT, we'll have a DD tag. Now the DD tag is a supporting document to our DT. So we can just say that text is here. So we can do similar for another text. Let me say image, and then let me change this one to image. So let me run. Okay, so now you see we have the text as in the header, and then the image there. So that's for the list. And what we can also do to change, and I must also say that HTML it can be nested. I didn't talk about that. And so for instance, all these tags, you can nest them into each other. For instance, in a table, we can put in an anchor tag in a table. So this is our table Eugene. We can make this Eugene an anchor, which is a link. So I'll start and close it. In the link, I'll give it a property of an href, and then I'll give it the Geospatial Developers LinkedIn page. And then now let me also use this opportunity to introduce another property, which is called target. For the A tag, the target means that you are specifying whether the link, when you click on that link, it should open in the same page or it should open in another page. And so we can just input the blank a target of blank, meaning that it should open in a blank page. And so now let's refresh, and then we'll click on our Eugene. So you see that the Eugene text has changed. And if I click on it, it will open on a new tab. It will open the link that I've done in a new tab. And so basically, these HTML tags, you can nest them. You can, you input them in between. All you need to make sure that every tag that you are starting, you are closing it. Equally, you can make almost everything an anchor link. So even the entire table, I can decide to make the entire table an anchor link, so that if you click anywhere on the table, it will be an anchor link. I can also decide to make the image an anchor link by putting the link just before the image. So if I put this link before our image, let me space in. If I put it before our image now, even though it's an image, it has become a link now. And so if I click on it, it's supposed to link me somewhere. So you realize that once I put the anchor there, when I hover on it, the cursor changes, showing me that it is clickable. So when I click it, it opens the link for me on a different page. So that's it. There's another tag in HTML called frames, and frames are tags that are used to more like embed other resource or other. For instance, if you have a document you want to embed in HTML, or a different web page that you want to embed into an HTML, and you use the frame tag to do it. And so let me go down our page. Let me introduce a frame. And then you can put in an SRC for the frame. But even before, let me first do something we call a frame set. Now, frame set is more like embedding several frames into the frame set, into a certain frame. So for instance, if I do this tag a frame, if I do it a frame set instead, then I can input in more frames now. So let me do a frame now. And then in the frame, let me set an SRC. SRC, I think with SRC is just where we put in links. So anything, if you want to link something that we can more like a directory or a path to something online, you use the SRC. But if it is an anchor tag, you use the href. So if I put this in the frame and I run my page, my frame set is not showing. So I'm coming, let me see, frame name, let me give it a name, and then make it in the left. Okay, this one is not supposed to be closed. Yeah. So one thing, when you run any HTML scripts like what I've done here, and then it is not showing, you can, I think it's something that especially you'll be using a lot in the JavaScript, and so that's debugging. And so anytime you are running something, you don't seem to find it, you can come and then debug it. In the debugging, most browsers have it. So it's, you go to your settings here, and you go to tools and developer tools, and developer tools will open your code for you. And so you, at the element section, you have the entire code that you are running on there. And what is happening is just exactly like your code. Everything that you've written in your text editor, you have it here, only that you can't save. And so you can use this section to kind of identify why whatever you've done is not coming. And so we can debug from here. You can debug from there, and you realize that even the frame text that I put there is not showing at all. And so I'll look for why it's not showing from debugging code. So let me try and debug it. There are several reasons why your code wouldn't come. Okay, I think I understand why the tag that I'm using is not for that purpose. And so if I want to do this, let me use an iframe instead. And so yes, an iframe, I can give it my yes. Okay. Actually, yes, this was the code. This was the tag I was trying to get, an iframe, and then you put in your link, and then your link appears. So whatever link you put in there, I can decide to do google.com, www.google.com, and let's see if yes, and the web page is supposed to show inside the iframe. So that's it for iframes and for frames. Now let's continue with our HTML.
Yeah, hello Eugene. Yeah, I think we can pause here for those of us lagging behind to quickly catch up with what you've been doing. Yeah, so we'll give ourselves a minute for those of us who are trying to type what Eugene was trying to do to catch up, so that Eugene continues. So Eugene, let's give ourselves 40 seconds so that we can continue.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
All right. So I must apologize if maybe I was going fast. You know, some of these things, maybe you have to draw my attention. But I don't think I was moving very fast, maybe. But just in case you are missing any of the things that I'm doing, kindly draw my attention. And like I'm saying, at the end of the day, you see, now it looks all haphazard and it doesn't really make sense. But we are just trying to familiarize ourselves with the tags and the syntax. We'll start using them to develop things maybe subsequently after we've done the CSSs and the stuff. And then we can start using these tags to make sense. So is anybody having a question on HTML?
They can jot all their questions on the page so that after a presentation you can handle it.
Yeah. Okay. So we can continue. Now there's a very popular tag in HTML, which is called the div tag. I mean, I'm sure most of you have heard it. The div is very popular. The div is basically like a container. And so before you do everything, you can put all what we are doing in a container. So for instance, you know, we've done a lot of things. I can decide to introduce a container That's the div tab. And then I'll start grouping the things into containers. So maybe I'll copy right on the top here from here to the table. And then I'll put them in container, this first div. And please, one thing that as I'm going on, let me mention this. Our own sake is very ideal and is proper that we indent our code as we are going about our development. And what do I mean by indentation? Indentation is when you kind of space or you shift your codes. So for instance, if you look at this, my header, you look at the position of my header, and you look at where the title is, you realize that the title didn't continue from right under the header. This is supposed to help me identify where the header starts, where the head tag starts, and where it ends. That's why I've shifted everything that is in the header to the next line. And if you look at the same with the body, because so that easily, if you are using Sublime Text, you can close tags and see whether they end well. Because one of the major errors of HTML is headers that don't close. So those ones, sometimes they are, if you don't indent or if you don't kind of align your tags very well, it will be difficult for you to trace. But if you align them very well, you know that if you select this line, if you take this table, I'm supposed to see the closing tag of the table on that same line. We can see it here. Every other thing in the table, I shift it to the next line. So I indent it like that till it goes to the end. Yes. So back to the div, I put in my first in one div, and I said a div is more like a container. The div will make sense when we start doing CSS and JavaScript, because once you start grouping your items in containers like that, what happens is it's easier for you to style them, or it's easier for you to use JavaScript to affect these things. So later we'll be learning that if I want to, for instance, align all these things in the left, I can simply just give my div a style or maybe align to the left, and it will shift all the contents to the left. And so that's basically the essence of the div. It's just a container where you can put in things. That's the div. And then there are other tags in HTML. We have the form tag. And the form tag is a group of HTML tags that just, as their name represents, they are used to develop forms. And so for the normal form that we fill or you see on the web page, mostly they are done in the form tag. And so the form tag normally has a label and then an input. So you can put in a label, maybe first name, and then you have an input tag. And an input tag is something that would require you to, just like it sounds like input, so it requires you to input in something. There are several types of input. We have you have the name or the text input, which accepts every text. You can decide to limit your input to numbers, and so you use just numbers or integers. So an integer text, for instance, if I make my label text and I save and I run this, where's my input? So this is my input. So it can accept both letters and then numbers and everything. But if I change this type to numbers, and then let me refresh the page. If I come here, okay, I think the type is a number type. Yes, so it's number, not number. So if I change it to a number type, now I cannot input characters. Again, I'm trying to click on a character. If you can hear my keyboard, but it's not, I can only enter numbers. And I have this arrow left and right to to do that. There are several types. There's a type in HTML5 now. There's a type for passwords. So you know, when you are entering a typical password, the values of the password don't even show. So there's one for password. So you see I'm entering, but it doesn't show. There's a one for email. If you do an email, that means that whatever you enter, it will be expecting the email. You know how an email is will be expecting the at something.com or at .org, or you'll be expecting that format. So if you do an email tag and you enter something else, it will tell you that you should include an @ sign somewhere. So there are several of them, and we can be learning about them. So this is the form bit. You can add multiple of them, and so we can introduce some of the things we've been doing so far. We'll bring in the break, and then we can bring in another form after the break, and then this one will be last name. Last name. So let me introduce. So this will be last name, and then we can do the typical email bits. So this one will be email, and so please let me delete. I don't know if so that my page is becoming plenty. So what I'll do is I'll comment the previous things that we've done, so that when we refresh, these ones will stay on top. So like I said, we'll comment this one. Okay, there's already a comment in here somewhere, so it would affect. So now let me just close this comment, and then let me take away this comment, and then so I want to comment some of the earlier codes so that we'll have limited or a small amount to show on our screen. So this is the email, and email should have a type of email. Yes. Then the age. The age should be email type of number. Okay, so you can, in filling the form, let's see how it works. Then your email, if I'm moving on to this one, then the number is only text. So yes, this is basically some of the things I'll be doing in the inputs, the inputs types in the form. And there's also one thing that's normally you can add, which is also the text area. So you know, in typical form where they are asking for you to provide feedback, and the input boxes are very large, so that you can enter a lot of text. They use what we call the text area. So the text area, and to realize that the last box is bigger, let me add a label under, so that maybe we say message. Yes, message. And then to even make my work, okay, we'll come to that. So like I keep on saying, when we start CSS, we'll start styling some of these things proper so that they begin to take shape. So for now, let's, I know they are jammed up, and so it will start making sense when we do CSS. So yes, in the text area, we can define the rows or the columns that we need for our text. And so let's say in the rows, we can say it should have a rows of 5. It's just like the normal Excel rows and columns we know. So a rows of 5, and then columns 2. This is the property for columns. So we specify the number of columns. We can say maybe columns of 50, because the columns need to be quite long. So if we refresh, you see that our box has become a bit large. Now, for every input, there's a property called placeholder. You see that for most text boxes, they put in some text for you to know exactly what they expect you to input into that text. The property they use for that function is called placeholder. And so the placeholder, you put in a sample text and it will appear inside the input box. So for instance, where I have the name, I'm inputting the placeholder of Eugene. Where I have the last name, I have the last name, I'll do Brown. Under the email, I'll input in another placeholder and say ee@geospatial.com. Let's say this is my email. Okay. I wouldn't do that for the age, but I'll do one for the text area too. And I'll say enter your message here. So now you see that there are random, like they are sending me text that have appeared in each of the input boxes. Now watch, if I come and I click inside, it allows me. So once I start entering the correct name, so they are supposed to lead people on as to what kind of input, it's expected there. Now, there's also another kind of input that we call the check boxes and then the radio buttons. They are all inputs. And so if I want to do a radio button, let's say I want to say I want to add this one, sex, the sex of persons. Let me bring in the sex. Let me bring it after the name. So the sex will come after the name. So I change the label to sex. And then this input, instead of the type of numbers, now I change the type to radio, meaning that I want to use a radio button. And then the radio button should have a name. So I can give it a value first. The value will be used, especially with the CSS and the JavaScript. They will use the value. So this value will be male. This is what is used to identify that input box I'm doing. And then I enter my male here. I need to duplicate this for female. Before, let me introduce a break so that they align very well. Okay, let me come in. And please, I believe I'm not confusing you. You are following. Especially the way I'm. Yes, so female. And the value will also be female. And that's also radio. And so all the radios, you see, for radio buttons to wear the same, the name tag should be familiar. And so there should be something that links them together. So I'll put in here so that they know that this, both male and female, they are of the same radio button. So now let me refresh my page. So we have the sex. And so male, if I choose female, they switch like that because of the name, the unique name they have. They are able to do that. Now another input type instead of radio, we can do the normal, the checkbox that we know. And so if you are supposed to do the checkbox now, let me introduce a checkbox down here. And I would say maybe stay anonymous. How do you even spell anonymous? Okay. Stay anonymous. And so now instead of the type being radio, I change the type to checkbox because it's a checkbox that I want. So I change this type to a checkbox, and then I'll give it a name to, let me say anonymous. That's the name. And then I can let me say check here to stay anonymous. All right. So let me introduce a break to put our form on a different line. Okay. So yes, this is how we do the checkbox. So when I check, so you realize that all these inputs, but depending on the type that we use, it will determine how the inputs would appear. So that's a check. And then in a typical form, let me indent my code like I usually do. In a typical form, after all the inputs are done, the last thing that you can also do now, you know, there's a button at the end. You can use, there's an HTML tag button that you can use for that, but maybe that might not be the best, but there's a button that you can use to put in a button there. So let me also break it. Or most people, that's the input, the same input that you are using, can use inputs as a button. So I think it's type button, right? Yeah. And then you can do the name as submit. So I think if you do that, that will also come as that. But sometimes, so it depends on your preference, whether you want the inputs as a button or you want the typical buttons. And as you go on, you know that these things are not cast in stone, because just as somebody will use button, somebody will use input, somebody would also use just a simple A tag. And then there are ways where you can use CSS to design an A tag to be more like a button. So the person will use an A tag as a submit, and then he will design it in such a way that it would become a button. So these are things that as time goes on, we can also do. So that's it for inputs. And now in the same form, since we are on the form, let's talk about all forms. I think it's 8. And can we continue? We can do to 9, right?
Let's do 5 minutes and we can end it today. Then God willing, Friday we can continue.
Okay. All right. So let me just tackle a few things so that we will end with this form bit. Now, in most forms, so there's the thing they call a drop down. You see drop downs where you can select something. And so maybe let's say instead of the sex, instead of it being a radio button, I can decide that no, it should be rather a drop down. So to do drop downs, there's a tag called select. So now I'm going to change this text from a radio button. Okay, for example purposes, let me keep the radio button, and then let me introduce something for a drop down. So aside text in our form now, what can we put in our form that we are doing? So let me see. So right here, let me introduce a break, a double break, and I introduce a select. A select tag is used to, when you want to do a drop down, you do a select tag. So you start and close your select, and then inside the select tag, depending on the number of drop downs you want, you use the options to define all the drop downs that you want. So it's a select subscription. So what we are going to do, we are going to be able to select subscription. So let me give it a label. And let me name this label subscription. And so maybe let's say free, and then I'll say paid. Now labels, just like we're talking about, should also have values, because it's the values that the JavaScript or the CSS guy might need to. So we'll give this values to the also some basic easy ways of doing things in Sublime Text. I'm sure you learn these things as you go on. You can double select different places and input the same text like I did. I'll put a value of free here and a value of paid here. Now let's refresh and see how our subscription will be. So yes, free. Normally people wouldn't want the first option to show, so instead they'll do select subscription here, so that you wouldn't see the option that you are supposed to subscribe to. So let me put in select subscription here, and you see that one a value, because in my backend I'm not going to use that one for anything, so I just put it there. But then that one would be the one that will appear first. So if you drop down, then you can choose the free or you can choose the paid. So that's for subscription. And then the last thing that, or let's say one of the that I want to talk about is where if you want to do an upload form, that's also an input bit. So we'll add an upload and then we'll end the class. So let me add another break as usual, and then to add an upload, I'll do an input again. We use the input tag. Then this time we are specifying that the input should only take files, and so we'll put in a file, and then we'll give it a name of what? A file upload. File upload. And then we can go ahead to limit it to what it should accept. So we use a keyword called accept. Then we can specify what it should accept. So maybe we say that it should accept images. Anything image. We can use the syntax to limit it to anything image. But you can make it blank so that it accepts everything, document or everything. So let's leave it here. So this is our input tag. So when we save and we run, let me give it a label so that we can know what we are talking about. upload profile picture. Upload picture. Yes. So that's it there. So when you click choose, it opens your directory, and then because I limited it, unless only images will come. So you choose, and then it gives you the image that you have uploaded. So yes, and this, I think we would end here and then continue on Friday, God willing. And if there are any questions, we can bring them up. If there are any things, comments that somebody would also want to provide, we can have them now in the group. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Eugene. So we open the floor for 5 questions. Today we've spent some extra time, so we'll just take some 5 questions and end today's session. Then God willing, Friday we can continue with it. All right. But if you have any question after this session, please put it on the page. We'll try as much as possible to help you answer that question. All right. Thank you very much. So the floor is open now.
I think somebody is asking whether I can share the text after this session. You mean the codes that my text editor, the codes that are in my text editor? Fine, I can make them available. That's fine. Yeah, online documentations. There are a lot that you can go from. I think the most popular one that people know about is W3 Schools. If you go to w3schools.com, they have some HTML courses that you can take, and basically we'll still be around all these things that we are doing. And normally you can even keep them so that anytime you are looking for a specific tag or something to do something, you can go and reference from there. So there's W3 Schools. They are good. Okay, I'll share the tag documents. All right, I'll put it in the group after the call. Yeah. Okay, so, and please, are there any other questions? I think today our time has been fast spent. Okay.
Okay, Eugene. Yeah, I think there are no questions, so we can now bring the session to an end. So maybe a final remarks, and we will end the session.
Okay. So yes, thank you guys for staying with me today. I want to say that HTML, it can be a bit like we are saying. It's not something that you are supposed to chew all these tags at the start, but it's something that as you keep on doing, they stick with you. Like I also said, HTML now it's just a skeleton. So you see these pages that we are doing is just the skeleton. When we start adding CSS styles, then we start beautifying these things, and then they will make sense. And so the key is practice, and then these things, they will stick. That's it. Thank you very much. I thought Kofi was typing something, but I think he's done. So yeah, thank you, Ernest.
So thank you everyone for your time today. So let's meet, God willing, Friday same time, and Eugene will continue with the class. I think Eugene, you continue with the HTML, right? Or
no, I want to move on because of of the way time is. I think basically, so maybe we'll just touch on a few things, but we'll move on to CSS.
Okay, all right, that's fine. All right.
Let somebody, if we have issues, we can put them in the group, and then we'll know whether we should just touch on HTML before we go to CSS.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right, guys. Thank you very much. Good night to everyone, and stay blessed. All right, bye-bye.